Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Monday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. This is going to be a busy one. Hopefully not too long of a one because I have to go. But we got a lot to cover on the show today. We're looking at NFL, the World Juniors, WWE RAW tonight, and Wrestle Kingdom from the past weekend. I got a little bit more New Japan to catch up on. I've heard Kenny Omega's quite good. So we will get to all of that as the week rolls on. As always, we are presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. We got the new hat. We got new sweaters right there. Plus Canon stuff, Stampede Wrestling, all of that. Check out seaofdead403.ca for some great Calgary swag. And getting back into this a little bit, Swift Energy, helping with energy and focus for this show. Although I think they would like to claim one of those and not the other, given how I tend to be on some of these. But yeah, swiftenergy.gg, great place to go for gamers, for again, energy, focus. Check that out there. And while you are doing a little bit of shopping, if you want to help me out, you can use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off. So all of that is now out of the way. Let's get into things as we talk Week 18 in the NFL. The National Football League has reached its conclusion in terms of the regular season. Now we build to the crescendo that is the Super Bowl. A lot to cover from Week 18. Although, just a quick thought on it, kind of sucked. I'll be honest. Like, you watch the Red Zone, as I tend to, and I understand they can't just be like, hey, a lot of these games don't mean shit, because it's the NFL, and like it's part of their thing, right? But there was a lot of focus on games that really didn't matter. And I understand, like, my personal team, the Raiders, I've had one playoff race in the last 20 years in red zone times. And so maybe this is something that people care about, but there was so much focus on, hey, will this team be the 5 seed or the 6 seed? Let's find out. And they were cutting away from that to see like actual playoff implication games going on. And so I kind of feel like red zone might need to tighten that up a little bit as we go into 2025. And I'm saying this about one of the great broadcasting changes in the last 50 years, maybe ever, innovations anyway, with the red zone product, and everyone is trying to replicate it, and I'm sitting here and yeah, but on week 18, so, but just a thought anyway. One game that was not affected by NFL Red Zone was Sunday Night Football, as it was the Lions making a statement over the Minnesota Vikings, and there is a lot of talk about the injuries that have happened with the Detroit Lions, and the concerns that we should have about those, and the Detroit Lions said, yeah, but have you considered how awesome we are? And they reminded us of that on Sunday night. And the offensive firepower that this team has kind of feels like they can outscore a lot of problems that they may have on the defensive side of the football. That is how they got to the NFC Championship game a season ago. Now, they had Aiden Hutchinson that time. They don't this time. But Jahmyr Gibbs is pretty sweet here in year 2. And this offense is just, it is so dynamic. So I still have a bit of a concern if you're going up against a Philadelphia or a Green Bay or someone like that. But I think we saw against Minnesota, this defense can get the stops that they need to be able to get off the football field and give their offense a chance to pick up a victory. So I still think they have to be the favorites in the NFC. They're at home where they're damn near unbeatable. This was a reminder that sometimes we try to look for some of the flaws in the favorites and try to see, like, why should we pick against you? And then they remind us, like, hey, sometimes the favorites are the favorites for a reason, and just trying to find that value in a Super Bowl winning ticket or something along those lines is not going to be enough. You are going to have to try to go out there and actually, see how these football teams are, and Detroit is just awesome. More concern, though, on the Minnesota side of things when you look at Sam Darnold, and is he enough to get this team to where they need to get to, or want to get to, I suppose. He has had an unbelievable season so far, but he does have some flaws, and I wonder if it comes down to him to win a game in the playoffs now. I still have some concerns. They have a ton of talent around him, and it has gone very well, and it has been a fantastic reclamation process for him. But he's still not elite guy. And I think we saw that the other night. On Sunday night, and we've seen that a couple of times, right? Like the Colts game on Sunday Night Football also, where it was an ugly game, and then they just kind of did enough to get the win. You're not facing the Colts anymore. They're done. That Pat McAfee is ripping them apart on his television show. They're not playing anymore. You now have to face the best of the best. Maybe not in this round, but certainly the next one. And that is going to be a very big concern, I think, for this football team. Is this guy good enough to make those big plays when it absolutely 100% counts here at the end of these games? One guy who showed that he's enough to make some big plays at least is our boy Baker Mayfield, as he comes up with, look, it wasn't the prettiest of wins, but I do think it gives you some reason for optimism around the Buccaneers. I mean, they won, so their season continues. So that's optimism point number one. But number two, Baker Mayfield won that game for them. And I think at this point, any concerns about Baker are kind of gone. He is a good quarterback and can flash great at times. Can also flash a little, but when it falls in, he averages out at good, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. And he was making big time throws in that game and big time plays in that game. And then on the receiving end of a lot of them was Jalen McMillan. And he was the one who was making the big plays and the big catches to help this team win that game against the New Orleans Saints. And I think that's a real interesting step for them. With no Godwin, Mike Evans, it was kind of him and the blowfish, right? But you now have McMillan emerging as what appears to be maybe even a legitimate option in this offense. You have Bucky Irving, who's a good running back, Rachaad White, who can get the job done as well, and Mike Evans, who you kind of had to shoehorn 1,000 yards in there, but got to 1,000 yards and helped that team seal away that game. This is a very good offensive team. It's going to be a fun matchup against Washington coming up on Sunday night. There isn't going to be a lick of defense played, but it's going to be a really, really fun matchup. And I think that this Tampa Bay offense is showing that they are maybe a little bit more complete than maybe we thought they were. And it's not just, well, the NFC South team and they get to go into the playoffs and have a loss, and that'll be that. There's, I think, a little bit more to this team going into this postseason round. On the opposite end of that outcome, the Atlanta Falcons, they get what they deserve. That defense couldn't make a stop when they absolutely needed to. They made some moves to improve the defense right before the season started, but at the most critical time to not be able to stop Carolina. And Bryce Young, we'll talk about him in a second. Bryce Young is getting it together and figuring it out, but he is not put up 44 points on you figuring it out. He is, oh, well, yeah, it was a pretty good game. They got 24, but he isn't, sweet Jesus, we can't stop this guy. And that's what it was. The Falcons just couldn't get any defensive stops. And so I've made the point before that I think playoffs should, or leagues should have a, like bowl eligibility. You should have a playoff eligibility. And one of the things that would cut you off from playoff eligibility is, did you give up 38 points in regulation to the Carolina freaking Panthers? And so Atlanta loses their playoff eligibility because of that. And because they actually lost that game to the Panthers. There are great things building on the offensive side for Atlanta. Drake London proved that he is that dude. Bijan Robinson did as well. Kyle Pitts, major concerns. But the other thing that I think you feel comfortable about is Michael Penix looks ready. He looks ready to be a starting quarterback in this league next year. Leads to some awkwardness with Kirk Cousins and maybe a bit of a chunk of change that they're not going to have available in the old salary cap world. But there's at least good news that they have the offense to put something together. So now you really just need to focus on the defense and maybe shore up an offensive line spot. But I think the defense needs to be the focus for the Falcons going into the draft and going into free agency. Not going to talk all NFC South teams, but at least 75% of them, as the Carolina Panthers have a feel-good end to the year. For me personally, I mentioned before, Raider fan. So all these 4-win teams that bumped up to 5 wins made the Raiders' inexplicable 2-game winning streak at the end of the season actually feel okay because they were able to get lapped by a couple of those squads. But for the Panthers, that this was good. That the one thing you needed to know coming out of this season for the Carolina Panthers is, what do you have in Bryce Young? And you have at least established that you have a starting quarterback in Bryce Young. Do you have a franchise quarterback? That's for next year to prove. Elite, whatever, star, who knows? But you know at least you have your starting quarterback. They've taken a couple swings and big misses in the draft when it comes to wide receivers. They still need to get something a little bit more than Adam Thielen around him, and that defense is just atrocious, so they need to get that figured out. But the most important spot, they got that one absolutely locked in. Moving into the AFC, the Denver Broncos get in, and this was the most likely scenario coming out of this, was that they were going to have a couple of banana peel moments, but then be able to beat this Kansas City Chiefs team who had nothing to play for. And look, the Broncos put on an absolute show in this game, and I am hoping, and I guess I could be checking some of these lines here right now, but looking at what they have been able to do in the last little bit, they are, I think, getting a couple of people a little excited. And looking at it right now, okay, people aren't really buying into it. It's Broncos plus 8.5 is that line at this moment. But you know what? I don't hate Buffalo in that spot. Here's the thing about Denver. You get a couple people saying that they are the team you don't want to face in the playoffs team, and they haven't beat anybody. And maybe this is me holding on to my last shred of Broncos haterade that I had at the beginning of the season. But, yeah, woof. 4 wins against the NFC South, who, as we discussed, not great. They beat the Raiders twice, who, as everyone discusses, not great. The Jets, blah. The Browns, nah. The Colts, nope. And they beat the Chiefs B team. So, like, literally nobody. The only playoff teams they beat were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are getting in kind of by default. And the Kansas City Chiefs, who you played exactly none of their good players yesterday. So I don't think that the Broncos are going to be that team that, oh my God, how did they do this? That this is going to be a learning experience for Bo Nix, and I think that's where it is going to end on Saturday afternoon. The team that didn't make it in all of this, that played on Sunday, the Miami Dolphins, they have a bit of a headache to deal with as Tyreek Hill pulled himself from the game, which I think is complete bullshit. Everyone lost it on that dude from the 49ers a couple of weeks ago for pulling himself. Since then, we had Aaron Rodgers say that he got himself out of the game, and Tyreek Hill, who gave the little deuces sign to his teammates, although I think it was the deuces sign, but you minus one of the fingers, if you catch my drift. Just atrocious. I don't know what goes through their minds, and I don't know why we aren't piling on these guys. And maybe I'm just missing it. I tend to not consume as much Aaron Rodgers and Tyreek Hill media for reasons that should be obvious. But I feel like these guys really deserve a bit of a, like, what the hell is going on media cycle with them. It also puts the Dolphins in a really tough spot because they have a ton of talent on the offensive side of things. But I think we saw this year that the margin for error with that team is minimal. Tyreek Hill really does open things up for this offense. And if he isn't there, then I don't know, like, is Jalen Waddle enough to be that guy? We will see. A lot of people think he is. So maybe it is just to get rid of a headache and just move on. Maybe get a little bit of a salary cap savings and be able to make a couple moves. I still think Mike McDaniels is a pretty good offensive coordinator. It all comes down to Tua, but it's still, it is a good offense, but we saw this year that they really don't have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to talent subtractions, we should say. On the opposite end of everything, the Tennessee Titans have the first overall pick. And just seeing a lot of initial reactions that the Titans won't be drafting quarterback at 1. I actually think they are set up to draft a quarterback at 1 really well. You look at the offensive weapons. It's not like the greatest show on turf or anything like that, but Ridley, Westbrook, Akine, that's fine. That is a good base. They had Boyd this year too. I can't remember if it's a multi-year contract or not. But they have him. You have Spears in the backfield, Pollard as well. And if he comes back, and Chika Okonkwo, who I think is criminally underutilized. Sorry for punching the microphone. Criminally underutilized as an offensive weapon at the tight end spot. They have used first-round picks in back-to-back years on offensive tackles. They signed a ton of veterans on the defensive side of the football. And so if some of them stick around, there's actually a pretty good foundation to bring in a Cam Ward or probably more likely a Shadur Sanders and let them roll that way. And because I think a lot of times, like, you look at the teams, and we've talked about it all season long, Sorry. You look at the teams, and we've talked about it all season long. The the Giants, they have Malik Neighbors and nothing else. The Raiders, they have Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers kind of, and nothing else. The Patriots, they bring in Drake May, nothing around this kid. That's not this situation. This is actually not a bad, it's not the perfect one to walk into, but in terms of teams who would be drafting number one overall, it's not a bad situation to be walking into. So I think that it would be a mistake for some of the teams who were battling for that spot to draft a quarterback number one, as we talked about on our quarterback episode a bit ago. Shedeur Sanders was the 9th ranked player on the ESPN big board going into bowl season. And so, like, yeah, if you are looking to turn your franchise around and you are taking the number one overall pick and using it on the 9th best player in the draft, that can set you back a little bit. For those watching in the live chat, I just shared the link to the quarterback needs video that we did a little bit ago. If you put not a bad quarterback, but if you put the 9th best player in the draft on a team that doesn't have much of a foundation built, they're going to suffer. That's what we have seen throughout this league for a long time now, and that's why offenses are down. But I think the Titans are set up in a pretty good way to make that case. Again, you can certainly make the argument that quarterbacks shouldn't be taken first overall this year, but I do think that the Titans will be fine if they do go that way. They take away the spot from the New England Patriots, who lose the first overall pick because they win that game. They didn't need the first overall pick. They fall to, 4, I think? They'll be fine there, but you're not going to get that Bears-esque haul that could have been huge for them because they do have some spots that they need to fill in on this team. They're going to get a solid player, but I don't think you're going to get that franchise-altering move that they could have had if they ended up with that first pick. But this isn't the Jets a few years ago, losing that game and losing out, or winning that game and losing out on Trevor Lawrence. I don't think that's what this is this year. It takes away their opportunity to get a little bit creative in the trade market and really make some big moves when it comes to that. The Patriots do, though, make another move in firing Gerard Mayo. I understand one and done for a coach feels like a rushed move, and I think what Gronk said has some weight. We do tend to rush in the NFL. We throw a first-year coach in, and if they're not awesome right away, then it's okay, on to the next thing. And we do that in the NFL with basically everything these days. But I do think that this is a bit of a different situation. The other part of it that I think kind of weighs in the Mayo favor is it's a bad roster. It is a really, really, really bad roster. But the one thing this team was supposed to be able to do this year was defend, and they couldn't. And nothing got better throughout the season, and they had some problems all year long. And then the other part of it too is that there was some obvious decision-making problems that were just, they are things that you should, like decision-making as a head coach, first-time head coach. There are going to be some decisions that you get wrong, but they were consistently wrong. And they were wrong in a way that they shouldn't even be wrong for a first-year coach. If you've played Madden for an hour, then you know some of the coaching decisions that they made were just the wrong ones. And so I think that he just clearly wasn't ready for this opportunity. And it sucks because it didn't go well. And I don't necessarily see a clear path to him getting another opportunity like this. It could be a Raheem Morris type of a thing where he has to go out and grind as a coordinator for a while still before he gets his second opportunity to be a head coach. But for the Patriots, they have the quarterback. I think that's pretty well settled at this point. They have a top 5 pick and they have over $100 million in cap space next year. I don't think with all of that, you can afford to have a coach growing into things. I think you need to have an established guy. The Vrabel pick just makes way too much sense. It made too much sense the first time, and it makes way too much sense now. I think that's the way to go. But I think for the Patriots, obviously a dynastic run and an incredible time for a very, very long time for the Patriots. But now in this kind of a turnaround, this is a really massive year for this team to get things figured out. The other coaching firing that we had come down today so far, anyway, is in Jacksonville, where the Jags have fired Doug Peterson. And I think this was the right move. The team got significantly worse in a division that was right there for the taking for them this year. The Titans finished in last place. The Colts struggled all season long. And the Texans felt very vulnerable as they underperformed all season long. It is a gigantic missed opportunity that the Jags season ended yesterday. And you can say, well, injuries, Trevor Lawrence got hurt, but he was very ineffective when he wasn't hurt. And that is that is specifically Doug Peterson's thing, right? He is supposed to be this offensive guru who can help get things going. And now this is two spots where things have gotten worse year after year after year. And they cannot afford in Jacksonville to have Trevor Lawrence be Carson Wentz. That can't happen for them. They need to have Trevor Lawrence be that guy next season. They need a better roster around him. And the GM not getting fired today is a little bit surprising. But they need to hit a home run with this next coach and get this thing figured out, because it is trending in a direction that no one really thought it would, with Trevor Lawrence as the head coach, or as the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Head coaching change that wasn't made happened out in New York, as the Giants are keeping Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen out there. I think this is the right move. I think Daboll is a very good offensive head coach. I think that he is a very, very talented play caller, and I think he got the most out of this offense quite a bit. I think that with now them having the third overall pick, there is at least a chance. We'll see what Cleveland does it too. But there's at least a chance that you give Daboll an actual quarterback to work with that isn't Daniel Jones or Drew Lock. And so I think you kind of owe it to him to see what, and you owe it to your organization, because I think he can be a really good coach. He got this team to the playoffs a couple of years ago. I think they made the right call in sticking with Daboll. And I think there's going to be a lot of people criticizing Joe Schoen for, Saquon Barkley leaving and having a near historic season. But that was kind of the right move for the Giants to make if they're going in a rebuilding direction. That's just not a contract you can sign, hilarious as it is that it went off and exploded in their faces. Coordinator change that happens to kind of wrap up the NFL talk here today. Lou Anarumo is out. Definitely a down season for the defense, and that is the reason this team didn't make the playoffs. Joe Burrow had an MVP level season, and Jamar Chase was unreal as a receiver this season, but the defense was 27th in defensive EPA per play and 30th in defensive success rate. So really bad. And that cost this team the playoffs. And it wasted an all-time season from Burrow and from Chase. And so while Anarumo has come up with some very good schemes in the past and done some very good things, this you can't have a season like this where your unit specifically costs your team a spot in the postseason. You cannot have that. Can't do it. Can't win with him. So you have to make a change, I think. I think he's still a good defensive coordinator, but he's going to need to rebrand himself a little bit. I don't think this is one where he shows up with the Raiders and just tries to get the best out of them. I think that this is one where he has to go to a team that they've got rid of their defensive coordinator, or the defensive coordinator has taken a head coaching job, but there's a lot of talent there. I think he needs to go back and kind of rebrand there, because this was a really bad one for the old Anarumo brand out in Cincinnati. But make no mistake about it, that this is not just a coaching issue. This was a roster construction issue, I think, first and foremost. So that is it for surprisingly quiet, Black Monday in the NFL as we sit here at 2:48 Mountain Time on Monday. That is going to do it for the NFL talk. Was going to do a bit of college football here, but I think we're going to push that one off until later in the week. It just got the show going way later than I wanted to today. So we're going to jump ahead and jump into the world of hockey, as Team Canada sucked at the World Juniors, and it's a problem. So let's discuss, shall we? Hockey Canada with a gigantic failure at the World Junior Hockey Championships, as the Canadians are ousted in the quarterfinals for the second year in a row. And so now major changes are needed at Hockey Canada. And this time, we're just talking about the on-ice product. This is, I think, just such a flaw in how this team was constructed. And like, you can put some of it on the players. Don't put any of it on the refereeing. That was such a frustrating narrative coming out of this, out of the game against Czechia. Like, what was the refereeing phenomenal? No, it was not. But was it the reason that they lost? Abso-freaking-lutely not. This was a horribly constructed hockey team, and it played out exactly how we said that it might. When they needed a goal late in the game against Czechia, and they do again, like they do end up tying the game. Heartbreaking goal at the end. They do end up coming back and tying the game, but as it was going on, who did you feel confident about when it was, okay, at least these guys are out there, right? You know, like I'm out here in Calgary. R.I.P. Johnny Gaudreau. When he was out there, it was like, okay, we got a chance to put something up. Walt Grizzly in the chat. The coach is an issue for Canada. That 100% as well. And I think it goes to the overall philosophy of how they built all of this with Hockey Canada. They have for so long had this arrogant approach to team building where, you know what? We all these other teams, they got like all this skill and all whatever. And we're Canada. We're Hockey Canada. We got so much skill, so much talent out there. We can just roll through these teams. We don't even need to bring the most talented guys. We can just bring a roster that fits the Canadian way of playing and a coach who knows what to do with that. And we can be successful. And you can't. You absolutely cannot. And it is how this team has failed a couple of years now. And it is honestly how I think they're going to fail at the Four Nations. Right now, I think Canada is going to, like, it is more likely to me that Canada finishes fourth at the Four Nations than finishes first. And it's like everyone else on the men's side has kind of advanced how to play, and Hockey Canada has just not changed their thinking in a really, 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 really long time. And it has just been stuck in this glorifying of when Brent Sutter was the coach. And, it was these defensive, hard checking teams. And yes, they were. They blocked 1 billion shots and they were able to grind their way through. But they also, instead of just trying to find players and shoehorn them into that, they found incredibly talented human beings to play the sport, and they bought in on that. And I think that is a very key difference. Instead of going out and finding guys for the system, find the best players and get them to buy into your system, or heaven for fucking bid, you build a system around them and try to maximize their capabilities. And that is where I think this thing really went off the rails, is that it was all just skewed, as Walt Grizzly in the chat said, all just skewed toward this coach who was an issue for this team. And then you look at how they tried to attack things. This was a really, really easy team to defend. And that became, I think, the real problem. And, oh, wow, all these teams are blocking all of these shots. It's incredible what they're doing. Okay, well, let's look at the montage of all the shot blocks, shall we? Shot from the outside, 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 outside shot. No shit, everyone's blocking these shots. You're shooting them from 100 feet away. They have a lot of time to get into the shooting lanes. And obviously, I'm being hyperbolic to make a point, but still. The entire offensive game plan was just work it around the outside and hope that you get a big shot. And if that was, flawed as it may be, your offensive game plan, then what the sweet Jeesley hell is Zane Parekh doing still playing in the Ontario Hockey League and Carter Yakimchuk still doing playing on the Calgary Hitmen when those are two guys who are tailor-made for that? You're telling me against Latvia that you feed one to Zane Parekh back at the point, he can't make one move to get into an advantageous shooting position, or that Carter Yakimchuk, who is a shot that could take down a building, isn't going to help out this team get all the way erect. It was so poorly constructed, so poorly designed, so poorly thought out, and it just once again shows the arrogance of Hockey Canada. And they are, I think, victims of their own success. And again, there is zero woe is Hockey Canada in anything ever again. But in terms of this, think about this. I put it out on X and other social media platforms when it was all going down 15 years ago. Canada losing in Canada in the quarterfinals for their second straight quarterfinal exit would have been a disaster. But now it's, they're back in Canada in a couple of years because they've worked out this thing with the IIHF, because we're the only country that has fans that really come out for these things. Although that's being dismissive to the other ones. It's not entirely accurate. But it has the biggest platform out here. And so because of that, they just throw everything at, okay, well, Canada in this year, and then Canada in a couple of years, and then Canada a year after that, and then let's go to the States, but in a spot where Canadians can travel to and make it work for there. And so they've turned into, honestly, the Toronto Maple Leafs from a few years ago, where we sell out every game. Why do we, like, if I'm an owner, and I'm selling out every game, why do I need to spend a whole lot of money and try to make this team better when I can just spend what I am spending and do what I am doing? And if the team wins, they win. If they don't, they don't. But everyone's coming here. So where's the pressure? And for Hockey Canada, it's kind of become the same thing. It's, well, there's no real pressure to win on home soil because we're going to be back on home soil in a couple of years. And so the cycle continues and continues and continues. But it has been very apparent for a long time that big changes are needed at Hockey Canada. I just never thought it would be the on-ice product, but I think that is becoming very clear as well. So that is it from the hockey side of things, and really from the sporting side of things. We will shift the attention now to the world of professional wrestling. It is a landmark night in the world of wrestling as WWE is on Netflix. We've seen the collections. We have seen some of the retro videos. Tonight, they go live. Let's talk about it. The WWE makes their maiden voyage on Netflix tonight as Monday Night Raw comes to us from the Intuit, whatever it's called, in Los Angeles, California. We are expecting to be back in the 3-hour era of Monday Night Raw with legends abound. So what should we expect from the WWE tonight on Netflix? I'm just excited to see what it looks like from a presentation standpoint. How different will things be? What we saw the cold open out on social media. They put that out a bit ago. I'm excited to see if it has a bit of a different look, bit of a different feel. We know what the new logo looks like. Do we get a new pyro thing? The ring, there's been a lot of rumors about that. What do we get with this particular brand now on Netflix? I'm just, that kind of stuff I really get geeked out over. So I'm excited to see the different presentations that we see over on the Netflix side of things. And obviously tonight, it has the feel of an epic show. Major stars, legends coming back. John Cena, Logan Paul is on the red brand. He is making his triumphant return to the WWE this evening. And this is kind of the first one of these in the Triple H era, right? Like, we've had a lot of times where, like, the old school Raw and the 30th anniversaries and all of those, where you'd get the legends coming back. And a lot of times it just led to a lot of kind of cotton candy booking, where it's, okay, that was sweet, it was cool, not satisfying at all, and doesn't lead to anything of value, but it made me feel good for a second, so that was it. Triple H, I think, has a bit more, a ton more respect for the legends when it comes to this sort of a thing, and I think that there's going to be a bit of an onus to kind of enhance some storylines with some of these tonight, because this isn't just a one-off or anything like that, right? Like, and don't get me wrong, it is a major show, and they are treating it like a major show with all of these big things. But then you're back next week, right? Like, it doesn't just stop here. You now you're going to get a big audience probably tonight. You want to now be able to grow that audience going forward, or at least retain some of it going into next week and building into what is your biggest time of year heading into WrestleMania. You have the Royal Rumble coming up. And so now it's time to really start shaping up what WrestleMania season is going to look like. A lot has been building to this. This has felt like a PLE or a pay-per-view or whatever era or vintage you are from. This feels like the big shows, right? And so, which is fine, because you should be treating it like that. But it can't just be, oh, wow, what a night. It has to be, what a night. Can't wait to see what happens next week. There needs to be that build, and they've been really good about it so far. WWE, I think, creatively has been firing lately, and that's been great. But let's see now, what does this look like on Netflix, and how are they able to kind of capitalize on this bigger audience exposure that they are expected to have this evening. So it's not just a fun one-off. This has to be a big night, I think, for the WWE. Coming up here in 2025, I want to do a lot more just wrestling in general. I've had a couple comments on some things like, oh, we should do like weekly wrestling stuff around here. And so I Also, like just seeing the numbers, whether it's on YouTube here or on Daily Motion, the wrestling stuff does well, and it's my guilty pleasure. I love pro wrestling, so I want to do a lot more around it here in 2025, which includes New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they had their big weekend of the year. Yes, first weekend. But it is always a big build and then a huge explosion into the new year with Wrestle Kingdom. And so going to break that down today. And yeah, here is the full show recap from Wrestle Kingdom this year. All right, so Wrestle Kingdom going down at the Tokyo Dome in Tokyo, Japan. In the main event, it was Zack Sabre Jr. defending the IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Shota Umino, but a lot went on leading into that particular contest. It is pretty obviously a rebuilding time in New Japan. And just full disclosure, like I wasn't able to watch this live, and so I understand like some pretty big things happened at Wrestle Dynasty as well, hoping to cover that as the week kind of goes along. So today, the focus is just on Wrestle Kingdom. The Ranbo starting things off, and it was Hiroki Goto, picking up the win over Master Wato was the, right? Yeah. What was the last participant in there? I know that the focus needs to be on building new stars. And so it's kind of similar to a lot of the sports discussions that we have around rebuilds, right? Where a lot of times it is anyone over the age of 30, get them the fuck out of here. Let's just trade everything, get assets, get all of this and get a bunch of young players and we'll be awesome. And I think with wrestling fans, when it comes time for a new era, so to speak, you go... quite frankly, the Vince Russo route, where, yeah, we just got to get young talent in there. Young talent always beating old talent. Anyone over the age of 35, they're losing every fucking match. 12-year-old kid, don't care. Beating a 35-year-old. Let's go. It can be a little bit too much sometimes. And so that's, I think that the direction you see a couple of times here tonight with New Japan actually makes quite a bit of sense with what they are doing. Goto is, for the recent memory, a fresh face in the title picture. He's also really, really good. He has this kind of air about him that he's one of those guys who I think passes the airport test that they talked about in WWE for all those years, where you would see him at the airport. It's like, that guy's something. You know? And yeah, like he is not going to be a long-term fixture of a rebuild, but I think he's actually a really smart pick to kind of elevate into the title picture while you have some of these young up-and-comers who are still finding their footing in New Japan, working their way toward the main roster. You have Goto, who still feels like a fresh face in the title picture. He'd have some good performances in G1s, threaten with a New Japan Cup, probably get a title shot here or there, but for the most part, he was someone in the tag team title picture or in the never open weight picture and stuff like that. He never really consistently broke through into the championship realm in the last 3 to 5 years, right? So it feels like a bit of a fresh face in the heavyweight title picture, whilst also being someone who is established, is a familiar name, and has the people behind him. And so while you are letting Tsuji and Umino and those guys, Narita and Oiwa, kind of build their way up, you get you have an established guy who people will pay to come see, who is going to be good at working with these kids and kind of elevating their style and elevating their stock. And you have this kind of established thing. So I feel like he kind of splits the difference very, very effectively. And so I actually, the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. Also, I will admit, I'm a Hiroki Goto fan, so maybe I'm just talking myself into it. The official opening to Wrestle Kingdom is a ladder match for the Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championships. The first ever ladder match, they were saying, in the Tokyo Dome. At least that's how I remember them saying it. If I'm wrong on that, my bad. I think it was a really fun match. I think all 4 teams really put on a show. A couple spots that maybe could have gone a little bit smoother, but you're going to have that in high-flying ladder matches. But the one thing I will say, I don't think you needed a ladder match here. Like we have had junior heavyweight tag team fatal 4-ways and whatever in the past, and it is like, you think of the Young Bucks, and I know that they'll come up when I watch Wrestle Dynasty, but you look at some of the more fast-paced junior heavyweight tag matches, and it's fast-paced, it is flying, it is razzle-dazzle, all this stuff, and it just felt like the ladders, in a weird way, almost slowed this match down a little bit, and so I don't know if you really got to fully showcase what these guys had. But in the end, I like TMDK winning this bout. I think they're going to be interesting as junior tag team champions, and the junior heavyweight tag division has certainly been lacking, I think, the last little bit. And so I think they're going to be a fun tag team to be at the top of it. But I thought all four teams were very interesting in this bout, and I think deserving of this spotlight. We move on to the IWGP Women's Championship, as it was Mayu Iwatani against Azumi. And anytime I've talked Joshi on here, Azumi has to come up. She is genuinely one of my favorites and is just incapable of having a bad wrestling match. And that was similar here. Her and Iwatani, I thought, put on a very fun show. Would have liked a bit more time, but I thought it was a really, really enjoyable match. You got to see the athleticism from both of them. You got a couple of near falls. They got the crowd into it. And then in the end, Iwatani picks up the win. Truly one of the greats in kind of this era of women's wrestling out in Japan. And so again, I thought a good match for them, but you would like to see maybe a little bit more of a showcase going forward. Then it was the NJPW World Television Championship in what was, again, a very fun match. I thought everyone in this bout showed well that this was one of those matches where it feels like everyone who was involved is better for having been in that match. Like everyone in this match, Cobb, Oiwa, Narita, and El Phantasmo, all of their stocks raised for having this spotlight. And in the end, El Phantasmo coming back from cancer and winning the championship. It's an amazing story. It's an incredible moment. You feel just thrilled for this man who has gone through what has to be a terrifying journey to work your way through to that, not only just to survive, but to now be able to continue doing this art form that you love. And to do it at I would suggest high level. It's incredible, and it's an unbelievable story. Just from a pure, like, even ignoring the noise, which is tough to do, but just from focusing just on the wrestling product itself, I think he's a fantastic talent. And I will admit, I kind of didn't love it when he was doing all the Bullet Club stuff. I think, obviously, the part of being a heel, sorry, the point of being a heel is to get me to hate you, right? And so I would get actual hatred watching Phantasmo and Taiji Ishimori doing the stuff that they would be doing in Bullet Club and House of Torture and all that. But it wasn't from those dastardly heels. It was God damn it, these guys are better than this. Why are we still doing all the same stuff? It feels limiting for these characters. And maybe that's the 2025 way of being a heel, is that we know you're too talented and you're being held back. And gosh golly gee, that's frustrating. But it doesn't make me want to watch you more. Which is, I think, a bigger discussion about what's happened with Bullet Club in the last half of its life. But for Phantasmo, to get him away from all the Bullet Club bullshit, I think is really, really good. I think you have an incredible performer on your hands, and I think you have a very, very talented human being who's going to be able to put on a lot of really fun shows in the television championship side of things on New Japan. But again, Oiwa, Cobb, Narita all show up really, really well. Bullet Club, you get the Bullet Club stuff, but it was at least minimal in this, and so it wasn't too offensive as this bout went along. Can't necessarily say the same for the next match, as it was Hiroshi Tanahashi against Evil in a murderous lumberjack murder match where I think I was having a difficult time, and I will admit I haven't followed New Japan in the last little bit. As I said, kind of leading into this, I want to watch more of it. I enjoy it every time I do. It was just a lot of things came up over the last little while and wasn't able to follow it along. And so I missed some of the stakes, but I gathered that Tanahashi was going to have to retire and maybe cut his hair if he lost this match. So that was a thing. The big build is Tanahashi toward Wrestle Kingdom 20. But it's obvious, like they said at the beginning, that this is a guy who has had, it's close to 3,000 matches. And he is one of the great performers of all time. He looks every bit like someone who has had 3,000 wrestling matches in their life, right? Like, it is not the same. And so you knew that this was going to be a lot of the Bullet Club smoke and mirrors stuff. And it's just not entertaining. And it just took the crowd all the way out of it. And it's like, if you're going to have the evil House of Torture, Dick Togo, Dick Togo, sorry, tell I watched the Bruce or listen to the Bruce Pritchard podcast. Dick Togo coming down with the chop thing on the thing. If you're gonna do that, having it in a Tanahashi match, I think makes the most sense because he can't just go out and give you a fast-paced 20 anymore, right? He can sling blade, high fly flow, and that's basically it. So you have to have all of that. It kind of sucks. The one good thing about it is like Oleg and Watto each get to have a couple of fun spots in it, so they get to be highlighted a little bit. The crowd got into the finish though, at least, so maybe I'm just bitching for the sake of bitching. And then Shibata coming out after, and that really got the crowd into it. I think very interesting that he came out in an AEW sweater. I think there's a few things that you can kind of read from that, but not going to read too much into it anyway. And yeah, they're going to be having a match, or they did have a match at Dynasty. Then, Never Openweight Championship and the AEW International Championship on the line as Shingo Takagi takes on Konosuke Takeshita. This was a good, hard-hitting match, but the crowd really didn't seem into it. I think Takeshita is a real talent and is a future star. I think there does need to be a little bit more charisma in there, but the matches are very, very good. But he is not quite over with this Japanese crowd right now. It didn't feel like that. There was no heat to this match, and these are two of my favorite performers. I wasn't disappointed by the match at all. It didn't really feel like the crowd got all that into it. Takeshita does get the win, and then you get a face-off with Ishii, which got the crowd really fired up. And this was the other one where like Ishii has been around for forever, right? And he has been in the title picture at various moments, but again, not a mainstay in the championship picture. And so I'm not saying that he is going to be working his way into that, but this was another one where you have this guy who he's not going to be a part of the rebuild or anything like that for the new stars in New Japan, but you allow yourself to have him in the ring with some of the young performers, and that helps elevate everyone in that situation. So I think utilizing him a little bit more in New Japan in this upcoming year is going to be a good thing. Then we get a bit of a bummer. It is the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship match as El Desperado took on Dookie. This match was fine, and then Doki goes for the flying senton and hurts himself. And that's it. Like, it's a crazy move. A crazy move. And then he gets hurt. It's real unfortunate that they had a kabuki actor out there before, and that kind of got the crowd into it a little bit. Like, it felt like they were taking this very, very seriously. And like Doki is, I don't know, I've said his name different every time, sorry. But he is someone who I think is really coming along. Like, when he started, he was basically just the fall guy with the Suzuki-gun stuff, right? So he was just getting throttled in all these matches, and it's a weird looking gimmick, and he's maybe at times a little bit clunky. And so that hasn't been, awesome. But he worked his way out of that, and it feels like he is really starting to grow here in New Japan. And this felt like a very big kind of moment for him to be able to do that. And so that this feels like an unfortunate injury and a real bad time for them. And for Desperado, like, if you're looking for one of these guys who, again, established but new to the title picture, I think you can make Despy a heavyweight very easily and give him a couple of runs at the heavyweight championship and move him up that way. Like, I think this is a really, really talented performer and someone who is, I think, quite over with this crowd, coming back from a few years ago even. Next, it is the IWGP Global Championship as Yota Tsuji goes up against David Finlay. That Tsuji entrance is awesome. Like, he comes out, it is it's not like this grand, it's not the Rainmaker with the rain falling down and all that, right? Like, he comes out, and it is a red, like, fedora thing, and he just has it down like this, and he just smiles, and he's got the big white teeth, and he looked like stereotypical, comparison here, but he looked like an anime character, right? Like, it looked exactly like, kind of a villainous character, honestly, in an anime or in any kind of a cartoon or something like that. Like, he had that look about him, and so it made him feel like a very big deal walking out there. Is really, really cool. It very, not quickly, but toward the end of the match, it turned into, I kick out of your finisher, you kick out of my finisher. I kick out of two of your finishers, you kick out of two of my finishers. And then we do get the win. But the crowd was really, really into this match. Of the kids that they're building right now, Tsuji definitely feels like the one that has kind of the most around him. And so to give him the secondary championship, I think makes absolute sense. And look, they did a good job with Finlay as well, building him up. So this felt like a big deal. This was my match of the night. I really enjoyed this match. And I think you come out of it again. David Finlay feels still like a dangerous guy, but it's just, yeah, Yota Tsuji beat him, and now he's on because he is just that good. And that brings us to the co-main event of the evening. It was Hiromu Takahashi taking on Tetsuya Naito in a special singles match. This was a solid match. I don't think it reached the dream match levels that it could have if we had it a couple of years ago. There is part of me that thinks Hiromu winning would have probably been the way to go. I know I just said, like, anyone who's over the age of 35, you don't have to beat them all the time. But I do think that Hiromu is one of those guys who is, like, on the cusp, but, like, he is over, I guess, with the crowd. And I feel like, so maybe, I guess, a loss doesn't kill him. But you can really have something special with this guy and with Desperado, I think. Like I said, kind of moving those guys up into the heavyweight ranks here in 2025. And so I feel like you could kind of build off of that, a win over his mentor and work his way up there. Or you get this motivated me, and no matter what I accomplish, I still have this thing hanging over me. So even though we said this is one and done, I still need to beat you in order to fully get over that hump. So there are storytelling things you can tell with this one. But again, like, it's Naito, he is not what he was a couple of years ago. It is certainly slowing down. The injuries are taking their toll on him for sure. Again, one of the great performers of his era. But it was still a good match. And I'm interested to see what the story is going forward. And then we get to the main event. As mentioned before, it was Zack Sabre Jr. against Shota Umino for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. I think this was a really good match to close. They went on the the English broadcast anyway. They went really hard on the story that Umino, he has so much to prove to the fans who believe in him, the children who are making paper belts of the IWGP Heavyweight Championship and giving it to him, and the fathers who brought their kids to their shows. He has to make these people feel validated for the belief in him and stuff like that. And then they fucking beat him. So that sucks. But it does seem like the crowd's a little split on this guy. And I understand, like, they did the BCC stuff with him at the around this time last year. And so there's a little bit of a half and half thing going on with him. Like I think it's good that they cut the hair because he just looked like a Tanahashi clone for a while. And so, but I think maybe they went a little bit too far away from he's the next Tanahashi thing, and going over into the dark side of it, and now people don't really know where they're at, and like he calling himself the ace, which you don't do, and all those different things. Like they did a lot of stuff to kind of make him feel edgy, and I feel like it's stuff that would make you feel edgy for a North American audience, but the Japanese audience is different, and it just kind of healed him to them, and so it didn't really feel like this was their guy going for a championship opportunity. It felt very split. Zack Sabre Jr. is a phenomenal performer. There isn't a whole lot that needs to be said with that. This match went 43 minutes. It never dragged for me, but this never once felt like one of those classic Wrestle Kingdom main events where, oh my God, these guys have gone 40 minutes. This is an absolute classic match of the year. That was generally a thing for Wrestle Kingdom for a little bit. You would almost have to disqualify any Wrestle Kingdom match from being match of the year because every year they had one. And there were some good matches on this show. Actually, everything. Like, there wasn't a bad match on the show, but nothing really stole the show or anything like that. It was just a very solid night for New Japan. But again, now, once again, full disclosure, I haven't seen Wrestle Dynasty yet, or New Year's Dash, so there's some big stuff coming. But there wasn't a whole lot from this where it's like, okay, I'm back in New Japan. Let's go. Let's fire up Fire Pro Wrestling again, and let's get all these things rolling. It was like, yeah, this was a fun night of wrestling. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to continue to watch New Japan, but it might just be the big events now, and none of the Road 2s or anything like that. Like, this was, overall, it is a strong wrestling show from a brand that kind of needs it right now, but wasn't that real kick in the ass that I think some people maybe want it to be for them. But again, still in the building phase. So that's going to do it for the show here today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. This was a bit on the long side today, so appreciate you guys hanging in with me. As always, the show presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for some great Calgary swag. Again, if you want some energy and some focus to get through, say, a 57-minute show with me, you can check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off everything there. There's a link in the chat that will get you to where you need to get to for all of that to help support me and help support this show. Tomorrow, we are going to be doing a video game stream, going to be talking some wrestling stuff, going to try to catch up on a little bit more and all of that. So that's coming up here on the channel. Coming up for me in a couple hours, I got to get out of here because I'm going on Sportsnet 960 The Fan, going to be there from 6 to 8 on Sportsnet tonight, something new we're trying out there for at least the next couple of months. So going to be doing that on select Mondays. As always, follow me on social media. You guys are amazing. Thank you guys so much. Looking forward to some big things here in 2025. I will talk to all of you later. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.